Hi, good day. So, for my presentation, I'm going to be talking about the evolution of tetrapods' reproductive adaptations as they transition from water to land. This is the index for the presentation. You can pause and take a moment to read through. Let's start with the introduction. Each slide will have the key points for each topic. Tetrapods represent a critical evolutionary transition from water to land, marked by significant changes in various biological systems, and the one that we're going to be discussing today is their reproductive system. As they transitioned to land life, they were presented with several challenges for early vertebrates, which includes the need to reproduce. The adaptations were essential in order for them to survive on land, where the conditions are different as compared to the water. This presentation explores the reproductive adaptation of the tetrapods, tracing their evolution through different clades, with a focus on the transition to land and the various reproductive strategies that emerged. So we take a look at slide 2. Slide 2 talks about early ancestors. Now, I have a hard time pronouncing these, but I'm going to try my best. Poroliforms, osteloforms, and E-form. Sorry. So let's talk about this. Before the emergence of true tetrapods, early lobed fin fish like proliforms, osteoforms, and are considered key ancestors to tetrapods. These groups that I just called out exhibited a lot of changes in their skeletal structures, particularly in the fins anatomy, which laid the foundation for the development of the limbs that helped them survive on land. These fishes had internal fertilization, and though their reproductive strategies were still largely water-like or aquatic-like, the development of robust fleshy fins in some species indicated potential pre-adaptations for land life movements and possible for adapting reproductive systems to the terrestrial environment. So let's dive a little deeper and let's talk about the early fish reproductive system. So the early fish reproductive system involved external fertilization, with eggs being released into the water and fertilized externally, right, out of body. The transition to the land adaptations prevented dissociation of eggs, leading the evolutionary of amniotic eggs in later tetrapods. For the next slide, we're going to talk about the tiktaalik, the fisher-pod. The tiktaalik is often described as or called the fisher-pod, and it represents a significant transition between the fish and the early tetrapods. This creature lived about 375 million years ago and had both fish-like characteristics such as having fins and tetrapod features. So this animal marks an important point in evolution history where animals began to venture out of the water and onto the land. They developed the ability to use its fins for particular land-like locomotion, but its reproductive system likely still followed those of the aquatic life, so of external fertilization. So they were likely to lay external eggs and live in shallow water, and they would have faced new pressure on eggs development, which might have eventually led to the evolution of mechanisms to protect their eggs from drying out. Again, it's really hard for me to pronounce these words. Let's call it I and A. So both I and A are among the first true tetrapods emerging from like about 360 million years ago, which is a very long time, right? These early land vertebrates represented a further step in the transition to the land life. I had functional limbs and lungs, but still had a strong dependence on like the water environment in order to survive and breathe. The reproductive systems of these organisms would have still been somewhat constrained and somewhat for the aquatic life. However, they would have been subjected to the same evolutionary pressure, pushing for more efficient reproductive strategies such as internal fertilization, which development of eggs could survive on land. So internal fertilization was better for them to in order to survive on land. So the pressure to protect the eggs from this dissociation would drive the evolution of more sophisticated reproductive mechanisms. So as you can see here, the key points would be reproduction, which is like the external fertilization transitioning towards, sorry, my accent is kind of strong, transitioning towards internal fertilization. Their challenge was adapting to reproductive systems for land survival. Now let's talk about the first fully terrestrial vertebrates. Terrestrial, sorry, again, my accents. So the first fully terrestrial vertebrates, evolution. Amniotic egg protects from dissociation, allows egg laying on land, and fertilization, internal fertilization. So these are two things that occurred for the reproductive in order for animals to survive on the land. It was very important, especially internal, to protect them from predators. Tetrapods and internal fertilization. Internal fertilization as the dominant strategy. Amniotic egg, key innovation for survival in dry environments. And amniotic eggs is important. Reproductive systems, including gonads and tracts for internal fertilization. Amphibians, a transitional group. Amphibians like frogs, slammers, and caecilians are very unique in the dependence on water for reproduction. Though they also represent the first group to fully move onto land, amphibians typically require water for external fertilization and the development of their eggs. Some amphibians have evolved unique reproductive strategies such as direct development or guarding and caring for their eggs. Amphibians still rely on aquatic environments, and their adaptations to terrestrial environments are often involve evolution of moisture retaining habitats for their offspring. Amniotes. The evolution of amniotes, the common ancestor of reptiles, birds, and mammals, marked the culmination of reproductive adaptations for land life. Amniotes possesses the amniotic egg, yes, and internal fertilization is the norm across this group. The development of the amniotic egg allowed these animals to lay eggs on land away from the water, and offsprings could develop to protect and self-contain the environment. Reptile groups and reproductive strategies. Reptiles groups, right? So within reptiles, various clades have developed distinct reproductive strategies. For example, let's talk about the turtles. Turtles often lay their eggs in nests on land, and the eggs are protected by a very hard shell. Lizards and snakes also lay their eggs or give birth to live young species, so that's something that I learned while doing my research, that snakes could also give birth to live young. I thought it was just only eggs. With internal fertilization, so the internal fertilization is being universal. Turtles lay their eggs on land with a hard shell. Snakes, as I said, turtles lay their eggs with a hard shell, protective shell. Lizards and snakes have internal fertilization and evolution of diverse reproductive strategies based on environmental pressure. So now to close off this, the transition from water to land was a complex process that involved a range of adaptations in various systems, especially the reproductive system. The key evolutionary innovation that allowed vertebrates to thrive on land was the amniotic egg, which facilitated internal fertilization and provided a protection from this desiccation. I feel like I've been saying dissociation before, but I meant desiccation. Desiccation. The shift to internal fertilization, the development of protective egg membranes, and the eventual diversification of reproductive strategies across different tetrapods highlights the dynamic relationship between the evolution and the environment. Understanding the evolutionary process provides valuable insights into the mechanisms that enable vertebrates to conquer terrestrial environments and thrive in diverse ecological niches. Down below is also the references from where I got all my resources from.